This Walmart is helping fight climate change. No, seriously, check out their roof. Almost every inch of it is covered in solar panels, which drastically reduces the amount of energy that they pull from the nearest power station. Now, I hate to break it to you, but Walmart isn't doing this out of the goodness of their heart. I mean, this is the same company who cares so much about keeping costs low that they actively employ loads of people who are currently on public assistance. So no, the only reason that they have all this solar is because it helps them save even more money due to the net metering rules in California. Those net metering rules have been so successful that California went from near zero solar generation of electricity in 2002 to over 12,000 megawatts in 2022. But as of last December, California has given in to lobbying from companies like Southern California Edison and drastically cut their net metering rates. So much so that solar installations are expected to drop substantially. The argument by SCE was that these changes would make it so that citizens with solar pay their fair share of the costs for the grid to shuffle all that extra solar electricity around. So let's have some fun today. Let's grab the latest annual financial report for Southern California Edison and our calculators, and let's see if we are truly, simply being charged our fair share. Hi, I'm Nathan, someone who loves spending my Saturday mornings with my coffee, my cat, and the detailed numbers behind how an international utility company is run. And this is Save Money, Save the Planet. Let's start by seeing what SCE themselves say about rooftop solar. Wait a second. Where do they talk about rooftop solar and net metering? Come on, I know I saw it somewhere. Oh, that's right. It's in the competition section. What an interesting way to start. So what do they say? After acknowledging that they view rooftop solar as competition, the report goes on to detail how net metering leads to customers using the grid but not paying their fair share of the cost for maintaining that grid. This was actually one of the big arguments that people were constantly making in the run-up to the CPUC changing their net metering rates. In fact, changing the net metering rules was actually pushed as the most equitable choice, since rich people more commonly have solar while poorer people don't. So the average net metering rate went from 30 cents per kilowatt hour to 8 cents per kilowatt hour. But how do we know if this was the right amount to change net metering rates? Pasadena Department of Water and Power provides a great way to see why this is an important question. For every kilowatt hour that you purchase from them, you're actually paying 3 separate fees. The bulk of what you pay is for the electricity itself. Then there's a smaller charge for the transmission from the generator to the substation, and then there's another charge for getting the electricity to you at the point of use. The takeaway here is that it truly does cost money to shuttle electricity around from one person's rooftop solar array, but the cost is much less than many companies would have you think. In the case of Pasadena Water and Power, I would suggest setting a net metering rate at 11.8 cents per kilowatt hour or about 10 cents per kilowatt hour, depending on where the company stores the power before sending it off to another customer. Unfortunately, SCE doesn't provide a similar breakdown on their rates, but they do give us all the numbers that we need in order to do the math ourselves. And we love doing math, don't we? Let's take the cost for operation and maintenance, depreciation, and property and other taxes, which totals up to $5,815 million. And then we can divide that by the total amount of power supplied, which was 84,218 million kilowatt hours. This gives us a grid cost of about 6.9 cents per kilowatt hour. I know, it looks like this was all some elaborate joke just so I could put a goofy number in front of you, but I swear, this is actually how the math worked out. So if we wanted to ensure that a net metering customer pays their fair share for maintaining the grid, then we should deduct about 7 cents from the price that we pay them per kilowatt hour. And that is a whole lot less than the 22 cents which the new net metering rules took away. Shoot, even if I go crazy and include all operating expenses, which means that net metering customers would also be helping pay for purchased fuel and wildfire claims against the company, neither of which makes sense for net metering customers to pay, but whatever. Even if I do that, then the amount that we deduct only comes out to 8.7 cents per kilowatt hour. So make no mistake, these changes to the net metering rules just simply don't add up. It's not hard to see what's going on here. After all, it's stated plainly in the first sentence of the competition section. Literally every source of electricity generation that isn't owned by SCE is seen as competition. That includes any solar which you may install on your roof. And I can't really fault them for this because SCE is a for-profit company. They have an obligation to provide as much value to their shareholders as they possibly can. Solar rooftops on every home would turn SCE into a company who's only paid to shuffle electricity around from areas with high production to ones which have lower production. The result would be that they would make much less money for themselves and their shareholders. The competition section of this report even makes me confident that SCE isn't completely happy with the changes to net metering, because they make sure to mention that the CPUC deferred consideration of whether to assess a grid participation charge for net metering customers. So even though SCE managed to slash net metering rates by 3 times what would actually be a fair rate, they still want to tack on extra charges in order to continue to make rooftop solar an even worse investment for us citizens. But would a not-for-profit company actually be any better? Luckily, there's lots of not-for-profit power supply companies in Southern California. So I put together this little table which lists out each company and how much they charge at their peak rate for 1 kilowatt hour. Now, if you're one of the super cool people who subscribe to this channel, then you may remember my video about rental scooters in Atlanta, where I explained how we can use t-tests in order to see if the difference between two groups of data is statistically significant. So, you're probably wondering, is there a statistical difference in the rate that community-owned power companies charge versus the investor-owned ones? Well, I grabbed the total number of customers for each company, labeled them as community-owned or investor-owned, ran the t-test, and the confidence interval of the difference between the means does not include 0. So yes, we can say that community-owned companies really do provide a lower rate, and that difference is statistically significant. I know there may be some of you out there who don't really understand what I just did, so feel free to watch this video where I give a great explanation about it while flipping lots of quarters. Not only are these community-owned companies able to charge lower rates, but the largest of them, LADWP, they're able to make solar equitable at the same time. They have a program where they will pay people in order to lease their rooftop for solar. This way, people who don't have money to invest in a solar array themselves, but do have their own roof, can still support the transition to green energy while benefiting from it financially. LADWP also has a program called virtual net metering, which they use in order to help renters benefit from solar. In this program, tenants of a building will get a minimum of 40% of the electricity generated from the panels on their building, despite the fact that they don't own the building and didn't pay to install the system. So the takeaway here is, when an investor-owned utility company like SCE says that the only way to make solar equitable is to stop paying people as much for excess electricity, they're just flat wrong. There are loads of other ways to solve this problem. SCE just happened to choose the one which would also boost their profits at the same time. What a happy little accident for them. But how much renewable electricity we generate is only half the problem. The other half is how much electricity we use on a daily basis, especially in our homes. So let's compare what these two companies are willing to do in order to help you reduce your overall electricity usage. Heat pumps are obviously a huge deal since they let you heat and cool your home without fossil fuels. For this reason, LADWP will give you a rebate of $120 per ton when you put one on your home. SCE puts you through the Golden State Rebates program, which appears to have no offerings currently for heat pumps. They also participate in the Comfortably California program, but they don't tell you up front how much money you'll save on particular models. How about smart thermostats? LADWP will give you a rebate of $75, while SCE has a similar rebate. What about windows? LADWP will give you a rebate of $2 per square foot, and SCE does not offer anything. Power strips? LADWP will rebate $15 per unit, while SCE does not have any offerings. LED lamps. LADWP will offer $2.50 per unit, and SCE offers nothing. Cool roofs? LADWP offers 20 to 60 cents per square foot, and SCE offers... Yeah, I'm starting to feel like a broken record here. SCE offers nothing. And before you accuse me of having a bias for the city who has the best baseball team in the nation, I checked the other not-for-profit companies for these types of benefits as well. Burbank Water and Power, Glendale Water and Power, Pasadena Water and Power. Man, these guys do not get creative with their names, do they? But they make up for that by offering lots of help in reducing your electricity usage, while also offering fair net metering rates and offering a lower rate per kilowatt hour. So let's not tolerate companies who refuse to help with the transition to a more sustainable future. Get mad, but more importantly, get typing. Track down the contact info for your Public Utility Commission and send them an email. Let them know how important you think renewable energy is for our future and the fact that you want to see net metering rates in your area kept at a level that will help encourage more renewable energy deployment. But letting your utility commission know how you feel is only half the battle. The other half is staying organized and ready to respond to any threats that might come up against renewable energy. A great way to do this is by joining a local advocacy group who pushes for this type of legislation. Personally, I work a lot with Citizens Climate Lobby and the Solar Rights Alliance in California, but I tracked down SCIA, who is a national organization that we can all join. So check them out. If you like what they're working towards, then join up and get on the mailing list. If you don't, then feel free to keep looking for another group who's more in line with what you want. But just please, don't stay silent. Because if you do, then the only info that the government hears will be from companies like Southern California Edison. And I just spent this whole video telling you how mediocre their track record is. Alright, to all the people who loved this video enough to hit the subscribe button, I'll see you next month. Now go make a difference today.